G'day, I'm Schuey from Smoked BBQ Sauce, and today I'm going to be smoking some pulled pork. So let's get into it. That's right, today I'm making pulled pork. Now there's plenty of cuts out there that you can use. Today I'm using a pork collar. The reason being is it has a good ratio of meat and intramuscular fat. Now to start prepping our pork collar, I'll select a sharp knife and I'm going to remove any of the hard outer fat and silver skin. These will just not render down, so you may as well just get rid of them now. Any softer fat that has a creamy look and feel to it, leave a little of that, as it will most likely render down during the cooking process. Also, if there are any loose small pieces of meat or sharp angles, trim these off as they will burn up and dry out. We'll be making a rub that complements pork today. Most pork rubs on the market lean towards that sweeter side, and that's because sugars work really well with pork. But to this, we can ramp it up with a little kick of chili and nice punch of pepper. Now to start off, into a bowl I'm going to add some paprika, brown sugar, some salt, some pepper, some cumin, mustard powder, some garlic powder, onion powder, and a little kick of cayenne powder at the end. Mix it well and transfer this to a rub shaker and give the pork collar a good coating. I tend to apply my rub from about 12 inches above the meat. This just ensures a nice even coating and get no clumps. I do like to give the pork a slightly heavier than normal coating, as it can handle it. Now, do not rub the rub in, just pat it down and leave it to sweat away. You'll see within 30 minutes that the dry rub will draw out the moisture and it will look more like a wet glaze than a dry rub. Just leave some for the end of the cook. Today, I'm going to be setting up the 22-inch Weber Smokey Mountain for a medium to high smoking temperatures. Now, you can smoke pork at the 225 to 275 range, but I've been pushing those temps to the 300 Fahrenheit mark and getting some great results. Now, how I'm going to do that is 3/4 fill a chimney starter of unlit charcoal and light it up. Then once this is all ashed over, I'll place this in the center of the unlit charcoal where I've made a well for it. I'm also going to use some smoking wood. Today I'll give apple a go, as it should pair nicely with the pork. Just place one chunk next to the lit charcoal and a few more a little further away. Assemble the Weber Smokey Mountain. Make sure to put the probes in now to make things a little easier when the meat goes in. Remember to add a few cups of hot water in a pan. This will create a nice steamy environment that will help the meat absorb that smoky flavour. Once the lid is on, make sure all the vents are wide open, and we just need to track our temps and adjust our vents as needed. The smoker is at temp now. Now with these bullet style smokers, you really want to stabilise that temp before you put your meat in. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing the temperatures for pretty much the first half of that cook. But now we have stabilised the temp, we need to get that pork collar in. So just put that in the middle of the cooking grate and insert an internal meat probe into the centre of it. We want to track the internal temp to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This is when we'll wrap the meat. So just set an alarm for 160 degrees on your thermometer, like this ThermoWorks Smoke X4 that I'm using today. Generally, I will not check any larger cuts of meat while smoking for at least 2 hours. It's only just started its cooking and smoking process, so I just leave it alone and let it do its thing. But when I do lift that lid to check it, what I'm looking for is any overly dry looking areas. These I tend to give a couple of sprays of my spritz. In today's spritz I'm using 100% apple juice, and from now on throughout the cook I'll spritz roughly every hour. Our thermometer alarm has gone off, warning us that the internal temperature of our pork collar has reached 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's time to get the pork collar off and wrap it in some foil, because our bark has formed and the internal tissues of all that meat is starting to break down. So just to help it along its way, we'll wrap it in foil. Now how I do this is I'll place the pork collar on 2 sheets of aluminium foil, I'll spritz it with the apple juice and wrap it up nice and tight. I'm going to place it back on the cooking grate and insert the probe back in. Put the lid back on and setting an alarm for 195 degrees Fahrenheit. The internal temp has reached 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Now pulled pork can be ready anywhere in that range of 195 to 210 Fahrenheit. I find it's best to aim for that low point, and from then we're going to go by feel. How I'll do this is by using a metal probe. I'm going to start sticking that in, and once I've got no resistance in any part of that pork collar, we know it's ready to be rested. So the pork collar is probing tender all over. Now it's ready to be rested. Now this is a super important part of the cook, and I know it's tempting to dig straight in and start eating, but it needs to rest. You spent hours cooking this, smelling it, a little longer isn't going to hurt you. Grab a cooler and using an old towel, line the bottom of it. Now when I say old towel, I mean it. You do not want to have an angry missus after you've ruined the good towels. Now wrap the foil wrapped pork collar in another old towel and place it in the cooler, and then cover that with another towel. Put the lid on and have a drink. This needs to rest for at least an hour, but because of the higher heat it was cooked at, let it rest for around 2 hours. Barbecue pork isn't going to be any good without a knockout sauce to go with it. Here's a recipe of mine I want you to try. It has a nice sweet flavour but with a good peppery hit at the end. Into a small bowl, I want you to put some ketchup, some applesauce, apple cider vinegar, brown sugar, Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, black pepper and some cayenne pepper. Mix this up and stir it constantly over a low to medium heat for around 15 minutes. Once cooled, transfer this to a sauce bottle. It's time to finally get that pork collar out and start pulling it apart. And I reckon by now you're ready to chew your own arm off. So grab the pork collar out of the cooler and carefully unwrap it. You don't want to lose any of that liquid in the foil. Pour all of that into the tray with the meat. Now start pulling the pork apart, discarding any large unrendered bits of fat or gristle. Once it is all pulled apart, give it a light sprinkle of the rub we used at the start and a little squirt of the barbecue sauce. Mix it through thoroughly and it is now ready to be served. What I love about pulled pork, it is such a versatile meat and can be used in so many different ways. From burgers to tacos to nachos. As you saw today, I smoked a good sized collar as I'll portion some of it out for later use. I tend to weigh it out and vacuum seal it and freeze it. No matter how you use it though, it tastes so good. Well, there you have it, pulled pork made easy. Add some rub and let it glaze over. Leave it for 2 hours. Spritz every hour after that. Wrap it at 160. When probing without resistance, rest it for 2 hours and eat it. If you'd like to check out this recipe a little further, there's a link in the description to the website for a full list of ingredients and step-by-step instructions. Thanks for watching. It's now time for me to eat. Cheers. Now there are plenty of cuts out there that work well with pork. Oh, this is crap. Now the way I'm going to do that is by forgetting my lines and saying some other stuff. So we are just going to stuff this up monumentally. Intramuscular fat and internal. So the pork collar is tending prober.